Well, I'm 101 years old. It took me all that time to figure out something I could tell you in about 16 minutes. So, if you've got 16 minutes, I can save you a century of doing it wrong. That seems like a fair trade, don't you think? Here's what I finally understand. Being practical is not the same as being smart. Being sensible is not the same as being safe. I spent 101 years making sensible choices, practical decisions, never taking a risk, never making a mess. And I'm sitting here in a sensible house with sensible furniture, wondering where my life went. Because I was so busy being practical, I forgot to actually live. And here's the thing nobody tells you. The thing I wish someone had told me when I was your age. The thing that would have changed everything. Every single person who told me to be practical, they weren't happy either. Let that sink in for a moment. Every single one. My mother, who taught me to always choose the sensible option, died at 68 with a drawer full of dresses she never wore because she was saving them for special occasions. My father, who worked the same job for 47 years because it was stable, told me on his deathbed that he wished he'd taken that job offer in California. My sister Margaret, who married for security instead of love, spent 40 years sleeping in a separate bedroom from her husband. They were all practical, they were all sensible, and they were all miserable, but they never admitted it. They just kept telling me to do the same thing, to be careful, to be reasonable, to not take chances. And like a fool, I listened. I grew up Swedish Lutheran in Duluth, Minnesota. If you know anything about Scandinavians, you know we don't make a fuss. We don't draw attention. We don't ask for too much. My mother's favorite phrase was, "That's not practical." Wanted a red dress instead of a brown one? Not practical. Wanted to stay up late reading? Not practical. Wanted to go to college? Oh, Ruth, that's not practical for a girl. So I learned. I learned to want practical things. I learned to make sensible choices. I learned to fold up my dreams and put them away in a drawer, because dreams aren't practical, and the Johansons don't do impractical things. And I was a good girl. I was a very good girl for 101 years. What a waste. You know what's funny? I can tell you the exact moment I realized my life had been a mistake. It was my 100th birthday. Everyone was there. My children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. They threw me a party at the senior center. There was cake. There were balloons. There was a banner that said 100 years young. And someone asked me, "Ruth, what's been the happiest moment of your life?" I opened my mouth to answer, and I couldn't think of a single thing, not one moment, not one memory, not one instance in 100 years where I felt genuinely, completely, wildly happy. I stood there with everyone looking at me, waiting for some heartwarming story, and my mind was completely blank. So I lied. I said, "Oh, all of it, every moment." And everyone smiled and nodded, and we ate cake. But that night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. 100 years, 36,500 days, 876,000 hours, and not a single moment of pure joy I could point to. That's when I understood. I hadn't lived, I'd just existed. I'd survived. I'd been sensible, but I'd never actually been alive. And the worst part? I'd done it to myself. Nobody forced me. Nobody held a gun to my head. I chose practical over joyful every single time, thinking I was being smart, thinking I was protecting myself. But from what? From living? So here's the first thing I want you to understand. I'm not saying throw caution to the wind and be reckless. I'm not saying quit your job and run off to Bali. I'm saying I should have at least asked myself what I wanted. I never asked. I just did what was sensible, and sensible stole 79 years from me. So if you're facing a choice right now between the safe thing and the thing that makes your heart beat faster, please stop and think. Not about what's practical, about what you actually want, because you might marry the safe choice and spend 51 years wondering. You don't want that. Trust me, you don't want that. Let me tell you about all the things I didn't do because they weren't practical. I never learned to swim. Too impractical. When would I need it? Well, I'll tell you when. In 1962, my children went to the lake every summer. They'd splash and play and beg me to come in. And I'd sit on the shore in my sensible dress watching them because I never learned to swim. I missed out on hundreds of afternoons of joy with my children because it wasn't practical. I never traveled outside Minnesota until I was 63 years old. Waste of money, I thought. Do you know where I finally went? To my husband's funeral in Wisconsin. That was my first trip out of state. 63 years old, and the first time I left Minnesota was to bury my husband in his hometown. I never wore red. Too attention-getting. I have a closet full of brown, beige, navy blue, and gray. 60 years of the same boring colors because red draws attention. Well, I'm a 101 now, and I'll tell you something. I wish I had drawn attention. I wish someone had looked at me and thought, that woman is interesting. I never learned to play an instrument. What's the point? That's what I thought. The point? The point is joy. The point is expression. The point is doing something that makes you feel alive. But I didn't know that. I thought the point of life was to be practical. I never told anyone what I really thought, because that wasn't polite. Do you know how exhausting it is to spend 101 years biting your tongue? To swallow your opinions, your feelings, your truth because it might make someone uncomfortable? I'm exhausted. I've been exhausted for decades. I never asked for what I wanted because that wasn't modest. I waited for people to offer, to notice, to read my mind. And when they didn't, I resented them. But it wasn't their fault. How were they supposed to know what I wanted when I never told them? I never, not once in 101 years, did something just because it might be fun. Think about that. 101 years without doing a single thing purely for fun. Everything had to have a purpose. Everything had to be productive. Everything had to be practical. And here I am at 101, and I don't know who I am. Isn't that something? 101 years old, and I don't know what I like, what I want, what makes me happy because I never let myself find out. I was too busy being sensible. I was too busy doing what I should instead of what I wanted. And now I'm sitting in this house, and I couldn't tell you a single thing about myself that isn't practical. I'm a good cook. That's practical. I keep a clean house. That's practical. I'm punctual. That's practical. I don't waste money. That's practical. But who am I? What do I love? What makes my heart sing? What would I do if nobody was watching and nothing mattered and I could just be? I have no idea. And that's the saddest thing I've ever admitted. Do something impractical today. I mean it. Buy something you don't need. Wear something that doesn't suit you. Say what you actually think. Take a different route home just to see where it goes. Be inefficient. Be frivolous. Be a little bit foolish. Because foolish people have stories to tell. Practical people just have routines. And at the end of your life, nobody's going to remember your routines. They're going to remember the time you did that crazy thing. The time you took a chance. The time you were brave enough to be foolish. If someone in your life keeps telling you to be practical, to be sensible, to not take risks, ask yourself this. Is their life one you'd want to live? Because the people who told me to be practical, they weren't happy either. They were just scared. And they taught me to be scared too. Practical is often just fear wearing a cardigan. That's what I finally figured out at 101 years old. All those practical decisions weren't practical at all. They were just fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of standing out, fear of being too much or not enough. And I let fear run my entire life. Now let me tell you the story that haunts me most. In 1947, I was 23 years old. I had two men who wanted to marry me. One was Carl Johansson, good Swedish boy, owned a hardware store, steady income. My parents approved. The other was Thomas Brennan, Irish, played piano in a jazz band, made me laugh until I couldn't breathe. Wanted to move to Chicago and see what happened. I married Carl because it was practical, because it was sensible, because Thomas was a risk, and I didn't take risks. Carl was a good man. We had 3 children. We had a nice house. We had 51 years together, and I can't remember a single moment of real joy, not one. He died in 1998, and I didn't cry at his funeral because I didn't know how. I'd been so busy being practical for 51 years that I forgot how to feel anything. I heard Thomas moved to Chicago like he planned, became a music teacher. I heard he was happy. I never asked more than that. I didn't want to know. Now, I'm not saying I should have married Thomas. Maybe that would have been a disaster too. But I'm saying I should have at least asked myself what I wanted. I never asked. I just did what was sensible. The worst part? I passed it on. My 3 children, Eric, Anna, Peter, they're in their 70s now. Practical people, sensible lives, good jobs, nice houses, reasonable spouses. I'm proud of them. But I also ruined them a little bit because I taught them what I was taught. Don't dream too big. Don't take risks. Be sensible. Eric wanted to be an artist. I told him that wasn't practical. He became an accountant. Anna wanted to move to California. I told her that was too far, too risky. She lives 20 minutes away. Peter wanted to marry a woman I thought was too wild. He didn't. He married someone sensible. They're divorced now. I thought I was protecting them. I thought I was giving them good advice. I was just giving them my fear. And now they're 70 years old, and they're as lost as I am. And I did that to them. I made them small because I was small. I taught them to be scared because I was scared. If you have children, please don't do what I did. When they come to you with their dreams, their wild ideas, their impractical plans, don't be sensible. Be encouraging. Let them fail. Let them try. Let them be foolish and young and brave. Because the alternative is they end up like me and like them, sitting in sensible houses wondering what might have been. So here it is. What 101 years taught me. What I'm giving you in 16 minutes, so you don't waste a century figuring it out. A practical life is not a safe life. It's a small life. Every time you choose the sensible thing over the thing you actually want, you shrink a little. And if you keep shrinking for long enough, you disappear entirely. You become a person who exists but doesn't really live. A person who survives but doesn't experience anything. A person like me. I did everything right. I never made a mess. I never caused a problem. I never embarrassed anyone. And I am sitting here at 101 years old with nothing but regrets. Not regrets about what I did wrong. Regrets about what I never did at all. You have a choice. Every day you have a choice. The practical thing, or the thing that might make you happy. The sensible thing, or the thing that might make you alive. I chose practical for 101 years. I chose sensible, and I'm telling you now, with whatever time I have left, it was the wrong choice. Every single time, it was the wrong choice. So please be impractical. Be reckless sometimes. Take the trip. Say the thing. Wear the red dress. Marry the person who makes you laugh until you cry. Make a mess. Make mistakes. Make memories. Don't be like me. Don't get to 101 and realize you were so busy being sensible that you forgot to live, because that's not practical. That's just sad. Oh, and if anyone knows what happened to Thomas Brennan, no, never mind. That's not practical either, but I still wonder after all these years.